right, team, welcome to another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matt Hamilton, and I am excited to have your company with me for a discussion on the concept of ensuring that we don't bite the hand that feeds. Now, this really is a common sense observation that it's not a good idea to be rude and disrespectful to your superior. And yes, this is a leadership podcast where we are focused on leading people, but the reality is that we as leaders all report to somebody. Even if you are the CEO of a large multinational corporation, you have to answer to someone, and in that case it's going to be a board of directors. So this is a concept that is applicable to all of us. And as leaders, we have to strike this difficult balance between leading our teams and doing what's right for them, but also feeding into the objectives, wants and desires of a superior. So this is a very relevant topic from a leadership perspective. Let's have a look at a little bit of a case study to help inform the discussion today. We're going to have a look at a individual by the name of Carly Fiorina, and this is a story of how biting the hand that feeds can lead to some negative consequences. So let's get into it. Carly Fiorina made history when she was appointed as the first female CEO of Hewlett-Packard, or HP, in 1999. HP, a company with a legacy of innovation, was facing an exciting yet uncertain future. Fiorina, with her sharp business acumen and bold vision, seemed like the perfect person to take the reins. She quickly began to make waves, driving the company forward with ambitious plans for growth. One of her most significant moves was orchestrating the merger with Compaq in 2002. It was a massive undertaking and one that would change the very structure of HP. She believed that this merger would propel the company into the future, making it a global tech powerhouse. However, not everyone shared her optimism, and one of those people was Walter Hewlett, a board member and son of one of HP's co-founders. He was vocal in his opposition to the merger, and he believed that it was a step away from HP's core values and would damage the company's brand. Despite Walter's objections and mounting internal dissent, Fiorina pushed forward with the deal, convinced that it was the right path for HP. As the years went by, Fiorina's leadership style became increasingly autocratic. She was known for being decisive, but her decisions were often made without full consultation of others. She became distant from her board, especially from those who disagreed with her vision. Key members of the board, particularly those who had supported her in the early years, began to grow frustrated with her lack of collaboration. Fiorina was stubborn, convinced though that her way was the only way. So by 2005, the financial results from the Compaq merger came in and they were underwhelming. The company's stock price was stagnating and the merger, which had been Fiorina's crowning achievement, had failed to deliver the expected benefits. Tensions between her and the board came to a head. Board members, led by Patricia Dunn, had become disillusioned with Fiorina's management, and they felt that the company was losing its way and that Fiorina's leadership was no longer driving HP towards success. So during a pivotal board meeting in February of 2005, the tensions reached a boiling point. The board made the decision. Fiorina would have to go. It wasn't just about the poor financial results though. It was also about her failure to maintain positive relationships with the very people who had the authority to guide her. Fiorina's refusal to heed their concerns, her inability to adapt her leadership style, and her increasing isolation within the company had all led to her forced resignation. The news of her ousting spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the business world. Fiorina, once celebrated as a pioneering leader, had fallen from grace. Her abrupt departure from HP was front-page news, and the public's perception of her shifted dramatically. She was now seen as a leader who, despite her bold vision, had failed to respect the authority of her superiors and had become disconnected from the very people who were supposed to be her partners in decision making. For Fiorina, the personal consequences were severe. While she received a generous severance package, her professional reputation was tarnished. Her once promising career took a major hit, and she became a cautionary tale in the business world. Critics repeatedly pointed to her time at HP as evidence of her leadership failures, especially during her run for the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. But it wasn't just Fiorina who faced those consequences. HP too felt the aftermath of the decision. The company's stock continued to fluctuate, and the leadership vacuum that was left by Fiorina's sudden departure required swift action. So HP's board had to move quickly to restore confidence and stabilise the company. Mark Hurd was brought in to replace Fiorina as CEO, but the road ahead was a bumpy one. HP's reputation had been bruised, and the board's internal divisions had become public knowledge. It was clear that the company had paid a price for the internal conflicts that had played out behind closed doors. The story of Carly Fiorina and HP is a powerful reminder that the importance of managing relationships with those who hold authority over you is an important one to acknowledge and respect. Respecting your superiors, listening to their concerns, collaborating with them, and adjusting your approach when needed is just as important as having a strong vision. And that is an interesting little excerpt, isn't it? You know, it's that balance of having a strong vision and being able to lead the team to the realization of that vision, but also understanding when really influential people that you need to be taking along for the ride, for whatever reason, have objections, and understanding when you need to yield and when you need to press ahead. And obviously, for Carly, that didn't work out particularly well in that case. So we all report to someone. As I said at the top of the episode, this is relevant to all of us. You can be the CEO, as I said, of a major organization, but you still report to a board of directors. So we have to be really, really conscious to manage that relationship carefully. And it's a combination with leading a team of your own people and reporting to a superior who obviously has their own strategic objectives and initiatives to execute. It's a relationship that can create some complexity. If you think about it, you've got your team needs that you need to satisfy, and that is something that you are directly responsible for. You've got the individual needs at play as well, but that's a three-way thing. You've got people in the team, you've got yourself and your needs, and you've also got your boss. But then you've got the organizational needs, which both you and your superior have to work together on to ensure you achieve. So any less than really good synchronicity and alignment over those three aspects can create problems and complexities for you to manage. Now, obviously, having a good boss aids this greatly, but you will still have situations where you are required to manage that relationship very carefully, even if you have a good boss. So let's delve into that. What does it look like? There will, in any healthy working relationship between you and a superior, come times where you have to disagree or push back for the greater good of the organization. We talked a lot about that in the previous episode, where you have to make hard decisions and hard calls for the greater good. Leadership is not a popularity contest. And this is another side to that. So how we go about doing this is absolutely crucial. You're about to push back with respect to something that your boss has suggested or put in place. And we need to think really, really carefully about how we approach this, because we need to understand that our superiors are just people too. They're like us. They're not robots. They are humans. They have emotions. They have anxieties. They have personal issues outside of work, just like you. They have fears. And crucially, we need to remember that everybody has an ego. Now, whether it's a large ego or a small ego, It depends on your individual situation, but we need to account for the ego, and we need to err on the side of caution and make sure that we treat these people with the respect that they not only deserve, hopefully they've earned it from you, but also in a way that preserves our security, let's put it that way, in an organisation. It's never good to have your superior not particularly enamoured with you. So, how do we go about this? So, if we're going to push back, we need to make sure that we do it in a polite, respectful manner. But we also need to ensure that we're coming at it from a constructive perspective. And what that means is we're not emotional about it, we're not being personal about it, we are taking an objective, evidence-based approach to our feedback, and we're being constructive. And the reality is that a team member who offers really well thought out perspectives, different views where appropriate, that person is invaluable to a manager. And you might have experienced this personally, where someone in your team who's a real asset gives you a different perspective on something that you hadn't considered. But we want to ensure we don't push back just for the sake of it. So I like to choose my moments, and I like to make sure that if I'm going to push back, that it is important enough for me to wade into those waters. And what that does is it means that when I do raise objections or when I do push back on something, it has more weight, because it can't be considered that I just do this all the time. It's not a normal part of my behavior. What I'm trying to achieve here is the mindset that, well, he's pushing back. It's not something that occurs all the time. It must be important and worth listening to. So I think if you push back rarely and ensure that when you do, it's a well thought out and constructive approach, your boss is far more likely to listen to you than if you did it all the time and your reasoning was flimsy. Now, people who bluntly push back, you've probably experienced this in leadership too. Well, you know the response that generates in you. As a human, you have an ego, you have feelings, as I said, fears and anxieties. So when someone bluntly pushes back against you in a way that is not constructive, we know that they do themselves harm and they build a reputation, perhaps for pettiness, if it's something that they do often. And they're far less likely to be taken seriously. So you might have experienced someone who does that regularly, but even if they don't do it regularly, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth just once. Someone who pushes back in a blunt, impolite fashion leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And it's even worse if they do it all the time. They build themselves a reputation then for being petty. So we need to learn from that experience, remember how it made us feel, and ensure that we don't let our emotions get the better of us, and ensure that we don't approach our superiors with the same crass, blunt energy. I mean, we certainly couldn't be surprised if we do that and the results don't go our way. And what we need to do is tie our feedback into our superior's goals. We have to appeal to their self-interest to enhance the prospect of success. Now, I'm not suggesting that the only way you can get a point across or get some action taken is if it is in your leader's self-interest to do so. It might be that you actually have a fantastic boss and they are focused on the greater good, and hopefully that is the situation you're dealing with. But when I say self-interest, that could entail a scenario whereby your boss is focused on what the greater good is, and they actually do see that as a goal of theirs. Therefore, it does appeal to self-interest because they are motivated to achieve an outcome for the greater good. Therefore, having a similar relationship with self-interest because it's a value they hold. So it's really important to understand your superior and understand what's important to them, and make sure you tie it in, as in your feedback. Make sure you tie your feedback in to alignment with your leader's objectives, concerns, and goals. And the value of that is that it makes it quite clear that it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. You are offering feedback, you're being polite, you're being respectful, but you're also making it clear by drawing these links that it is something that is going to benefit everybody, including the superior. And if you do it well, you will find that your feedback is respected and highly valued. Doesn't mean they're always going to accept it. Sometimes they won't. They'll say, thank you for your view, but I disagree. And then they will proceed and take their own action, and that's okay. We don't get offended about that. But we just make sure that we do the right thing by giving the feedback if we are convicted to do so. If we are convinced that it's necessary. And there's another aspect to this topic of not biting the hand that feeds. Now, this is perhaps reminiscent of a situation whereby you might have a superior who perhaps is a little more ego-driven. I hope this isn't the case, but if you do have a superior who is a little difficult, little ego-driven, and you're preparing to come to them with a bit of pushback, this is a particular technique you can use to help that go as smoothly as possible. And it's from a book called The 48 Laws of Power. Law 1, never outshine the master. And the quote is, always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please or impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite. Inspire fear and insecurity. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the heights of power. So what that means in a situation where we have a leader who is insecure, perhaps has a large ego, it means that we have to be careful not to outshine them. And what does that mean? It means if we come back to them with feedback, we don't want to be overly critical with that feedback. If we disagree with the course of action they've taken, we want to appeal to their self-interest in the sense that we make it clear as to why it's worthwhile following through with your recommendation. But we also need to ensure that it comes across as if it's their idea. We need to, unfortunately, kiss the ring a little bit. You might object to that, but it is, unfortunately, the way of the world. You need to pay your dues when the time comes. And maybe if you have someone who is insecure, a little egotistical, and you're going to come back to them with some feedback because you've got some knowledge that perhaps they don't, or you've seen something that they haven't, and it's important enough to you that you think, for the greater good, I've got to get this over the line, but I need my superior's endorsement. If you are convinced that that is the case and you're dealing with an egotistical, insecure person, you might have to ensure that you don't outshine them by coming across as blunt or giving them the impression that you think you're more intelligent. You might have to come back to them and frame the feedback as a discussion or a concern and guide them to the formulation of a solution that you had in mind the whole way along, but in such a way that they think it's their idea, that they've solved the problem on their own. And that really is getting into some very, very skillful personality management and emotional management on your part. As I said, this whole topic is far easier to address if you have a good boss. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And I'm sure several of you have had that experience before. That's why we have a leadership podcast like this. So I want you to remember that. I want you to understand that there is nuance involved, and never ever bite the hand that feeds. It is pointless. Very, very hard to effect meaningful change in an organization if you don't work there anymore. And that is unfortunately something that can absolutely happen if you upset the wrong person through a tendency to be blunt, unprofessional, and perhaps not thinking things through as much as you might have done with respect to giving feedback and behaving disrespectfully to your superiors. Guys, I hope that helps. Food for thought. Interesting topic, something that we all face, something that we all have to manage. What I will say from a take-home message perspective is that if you have a leader like that who is a bit egotistical and a bit insecure, let that be a great example for you of what not to be. Make sure that if your leader's like that, you do not model the same behavior to those you lead, okay? Yes, people should be respectful to their superiors and constructive, but at the same time, as a superior that leads other people, you certainly want to make sure that you're upholding your end of the bargain and that you treat people with an equal amount of respect. Guys, as I always do, I'll direct your attention to the show notes. We've got a button there that says send us a text. It's a link. You hit that link and you will have the ability to send the show an email. You can send through topic requests, you can send through feedback, you can send through anything you want, really. It can be anonymous. I can give you a shout out on the show if it's a topic that we think fits in with our programming. Whatever you like, send that through, use that link. Very keen to have some interaction with you guys. I'd also encourage you to access the Instagram page link in the show notes. And if you're not following the Instagram page, guys, you're missing out. We've got reels, we've got all sorts of fun going on that page. So hit that and follow the show on Instagram. And finally, the LinkedIn Community of Practice group, the Exceptional Leadership Community of Practice. I'm trying to build up a network of listeners of the show and my contacts that I have in my professional network. I'd like to meld all of those together, and the benefit of that is that we all get access to greater networking, and we can also share some interesting leadership-oriented content within that community of practice to ensure that we're all on the same page and that we're all getting the best out of our leadership journeys. Of course, guys, as I always say, if you're getting value from the show, hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast app you consume the show on. And if you're feeling really generous, maybe leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for joining me, guys. Until next time, see you later.